All right, story number two. Big shout out to Curtis King, man. My brother Curtis King. 1 second applause to Curtis King. Curtis King's been on a tear, an interview tear lately. He has been talking to DJ Charisma. He's talked to Good Luck. He had a flowcation with Mick Jenkins. I think if you really look at Curtis's channel, it is one of the most balanced, one of the most well-rounded YouTube channels that you can find in the hip hop space. I mean, if you think about it, right? He will give commentary, reactionary news commentary. He will give a range of top tier interviews. He has a react to your music section. So if you're actually an artist, you can submit your music to Curtis and he'll give you feedback. He does a great job of intertwining his experience in the music industry and as a creator, formed an incredible DIYer community. He has Flowcation, where he has artists come on his platform, they have a conversation, and then they make a track on the spot. He'll make a beat and then they'll make some rhymes, right? That is a well-rounded rap channel. I mean, a lot of the stuff other people just can't do. Maybe perhaps because of the access that he has, which is a product of his reputation and how good he's been to people for so long. But most people aren't producers or rappers or practitioners in this space. So there really isn't much left for Curtis to be doing over on his channel, Curtis King TV. And yesterday was a big conversation. He had TDE President Punch come sit down with him in his DIYer headquarters for a fantastic 3-hour conversation. 3-hour conversation, man. 9 second applause to Curtis King. I really rock with Curtis, and so this conversation is wide-ranging. They talk about the origins of TDE. They go into some Black history lore. Black history, excuse me. 1 second applause to Black history, though. That's dope. Black hippie lore. Obviously, the things that he's seen in Kendrick Lamar since the beginning. They talk about the Heart Part 6. They go into different aspects of this great Shakespearean shakedown, this greatest rap battle in hip-hop history. They talk about SZA. They talk about Doechii and whether she's an industry plant. A lot of just uplifting, powerful advice. Great conversation. And Punch doesn't talk that much. Punch does not talk that much. So 1 second applause to Curtis again for landing this one. It's a big deal. He's going viral right now. So here's a couple of moments that really stood out to me from this conversation. This first one is something I've always really been interested in, right? When I look at TDE, they do remind me of Motown Records. You know, you've got the success of Kendrick Lamar, of course, the success of Schoolboy Q, of course, the success of Ab-Soul, of course, the success of SZA, of course, the success of Doechii, of course, the success of J-Rock, of course, the success of Isaiah Rashad, of course, and the list goes on. And when you really start thinking about the past 20 years, especially from an indie label, because they're their own label, they get distribution and they align with different majors for distribution, but they curate all their own talent. I don't know who they compare to. I just don't know who they compare to. And there's a lot of anecdotes in the early days of how they got started and things that were really important to them. And this part of the conversation, they talked about TDE's code of conduct, and which is important in terms of if you're trying to craft something extraordinary, how are you going to make sure that you stay on code, you stay following that straight line as life and time evolves? Here's what Punch had to say about it.
We had these
code of conduct, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was things listed on the on that we put up on the wall.
That's right.
As a reminder, what that came from was a Double XL article where 50 was talking about some stuff. A couple more people was talking about some different industry principles. So I took those and put it into our own language and wrote them up on the thing as a code of conduct, you could say.
Right.
But the overall, what the mission statement would be is hustle like you broke.
Hustle like you broke.
Hustle like you broke. Hustle like you broke. 1 second applause. They go on a little bit. Here's where they go with it.
Why was that important to be the center focus?
Because you're at your best when your back's against the wall. A lot of people are.
Mm-hmm.
You're more creative. You're more hungry. You're going to figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People tend to get laxed once they made it, per se.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you keep the mentality to hustle like you broke, you're going to always have that hunger, always have that fire up under you.
Yeah. What do you think is the origin of the foundation of that discipline? Because like I said, 20 years into this, there's only been so many environments that I saw even remotely close, especially when you're talking about so many different types of personalities from the artists that you're working with, from, just the situation as it is. What do you think is really the foundation of that?
The foundation is Top. You know what I mean? Hence Top Dog Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Like Top come from a street background to where he had a certain set of skills.
1 second applause to a certain set of skills. It's all happening.
Say less.
That enabled certain things. But in that, you know what I mean, he learned certain organization skills. He learned how to run a crew, how to run a squad, and we just brought those principles over to the music mainly.
Right.
And then also like having a sports background, everything is in sports metaphors.
Yeah.
It's like you got to know your team. You got to know your strengths, the weaknesses. You got to know who you can throw the ball to on 3rd and long.
Right.
You got to know who going to make a big play, who going to cost you a big play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of those things are important. So we just combined all those things together and put it into what we was doing with the music.
Yeah, I mean, and it worked. It worked. I don't think we can sit here and discount what TDE has built over the past 20 years by any measure. By any measure, especially if you consider Kendrick Lamar's success, SZA's success. I mean, SZA's SOS just broke Michael Jackson's record. She's a generational talent. You look at what they're doing right now with Doechii, with what they're doing with Doechii. You look at the just sheer consistency and quality and uniqueness of the rest of the roster, from Schoolboy Q, J-Rock, Absol, Ray Vaughn. Ray Vaughn is immensely talented, and you can see them going through very similar, very strategic artist development with him as well. And this is one of the last places that I really see that level of attention and artist development in the music industry. And so right there, the code of conduct, it starts from Top. 1 second applause. Now, another part of this conversation I thought was really interesting here is like, this is just like a really cool piece of advice, right? One of the things that Top Dog does, one of the things that Punch also runs is a room full of mirrors. And a room full of mirrors is a collective of incredible artists that Punch is mentoring and developing, and they have an album, and it's a very independent TDE adjacent project. Daylight's a part of Room Full of Mirrors, for example. And this piece of advice that Top Dog and this piece of advice that Punch offered to A Room Full of Mirrors, but also Daylight in particular, really stands out. And I think this is a piece of insight that we can all consider in our creative endeavors or our lives in general. This is really good advice. And it also connects to the idea of sports metaphors. So here's what he had to say.
With that said, though, Daylight, you gave some advice, and he said that you told him, as he was barring up, you said, "Hey, yo, Light, learn to master the mid-range," and then you walked out the room.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. See, the whole thing was most artists want to go for the home run right away.
Mm-hmm.
That's shooting a big three or going in and dunking crazy.
Right.
But that mid-range is wide open. You know what I mean? It's subtle. And it gets to the point. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to dribble 1,000 times and put the ball in your shirt and flip it around.
And one.
You know what I mean?
Because they never show baskets going in. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Pull up at the elbow and take the shot.
Right.
They never show baskets going in. 1 second applause. That's one of the things I used to find really funny about And1 mixtapes back in the day. Now that's a bit hyperbolic. They would show baskets going in And1, but if you really did the math on it, I think they probably shot a pretty low shooting percentage, if I'm being honest. But And1 was a different type of basketball, and it focused on the flashier nature of things for people who aren't familiar with And1. But I think there is a lot to be said about mastering the mid-range, right? Journalistically speaking, everybody wants to have a huge viral moment. everyone wants to land a huge conversation, or everyone wants to have an album review that just lasts and stands the hands of time. You know what I mean? But it takes a lot of subtlety to get to that point where you start doing those things. If you're in the YouTube space, whatever you're doing, you have to get comfortable with the idea that maybe not every video is going to hit. Maybe you have to figure out the system, the timing, the algorithm, sure, but also figure out who you are, what you're good at, what you're talking about, figure out your audience, connect with your audience. So there's a lot of subtleties that are on the way to success, on the way to crafting something extraordinary. And one of those subtleties is mastering the mid-range. Everything doesn't have to be a touchdown. Every bar that you drop doesn't have to be a quadruple entendre in this case. He's talking about Daylight. And Daylight, especially Daylight. Daylight is one of the top tier MCs, period, wherever in the world. And he specializes in multi-layered entendres, specializes in it. You know what I mean? And so he's working closely with Punch. And in this example, Punch had just dropped a quadruple entendre. And Punch is like, yeah, man, learn to master the mid-range. Let's get a very simple bar in here. I love you like a fat kid love cake. You know what I mean? Shout out to 50 Cent. Maybe that's ironic for this moment, but 1 second applause to 50. Just a simple line like, can't see me like B.I.G. on CMT. Simple complexity also falls into that conversation. And so this piece of insight that he's providing to a room full of mirrors, and I imagine he's been providing this to every artist that he's worked with throughout his career, really stands out to me. And it's something that really I needed to learn over the course of my experiences and in my career. Like a lot of times, it's the work that is the prayer. You have to love the process. The work is the prayer. And not everything, a lot of times it doesn't take something gargantuan to really make an impact on people. They go on a little bit longer here.
You know what I'm saying? It's more effective.
Right.
And people don't know how to guard it.
Especially in today's NBA.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
the mid-range is wide open for you. Just stop and pull up.
Oh.
Keep it simple. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have a multi-syllable metaphor every bar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Hit me with one and then let me dwell on that for a second. And then come back in with another one a little bit later.
Yeah.
But if I'm constantly trying to get this while you hitting another one, then another one, I'm missing the whole point of what you're saying.
I'm missing what you're saying, right? A lot of times we overthink it. 1 second applause. That's another jewel right there. I mean, there's so many in this conversation. Punch was immensely open, really comfortable. You could tell that they worked with each other before. You could tell that Punch had been familiar with Curtis's platform and the conversations that he's having and the amount of integrity that he moves with. It really came out in this conversation as well. So this right here is a clip from something that I think is a really interesting, that I hadn't really considered. So I think in a lot of ways, in this clip right here, he's talking about Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City. Now, in a way, it's his sophomore album, but it's also his debut album on a major label. And they had a choice to make around the song, Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, right? And so this is what they talk about. I think this was another piece of insight here.
What is the thing that the average consumer is missing about the sophomore jinx, quote unquote?
What I think happens is when you're doing your first album, you don't have a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it goes back to that hustle like you broke thing. You're at your most creative, you're at your most hungry, you're going to figure it out. And that's usually the stuff that people relate to.
Right.
Now, if that works, your next album, you're going to have a budget now. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to go get the biggest producer, the biggest whoever to try to make your stuff sound a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you go wrong. You stray away from what people know you for. It's like you can grow, but the key is to grow gradually.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go from your homeboy making the beats to a Pharrell beat and you don't even match. Like, it don't even fit your style.
But I got 1 million followers, Punch. Like,
you got to fight that.
But that's
You got to fight
I'm
it.
entitled to that, ain't I? He said, huh?
I give you a quick story. I told it before.
Uh-huh.
Good Kid, Mad City, that first official major label album.
Right.
Lady Gaga wanted to do Don't Kill My Vibe.
I heard that.
You want to do the hook? Now, this Lady Gaga at her peak.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? Tens of millions of fans.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got Anna on there. Anna's unknown at the time, virtually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we got a choice to make. It's like, do we go with potentially bring us more fans?
Right.
Or do we go with what we feel is the better record?
Mm.
So ultimately we chose to go with Anna and how she sounded on the record.
I mean, that's another great example, right? I mean, one, there is a process of growing gradually that we all, especially in the creative field, have to come to terms with. You know, I struggle with that sometimes. I mean, there are certain things that I am behind on that I'm most known for, and that is breakdowns. You know, when I heard him say this part right here, it was a reminder that I need to be more focused on think pieces and need to be more intentional and more dedicated to having think pieces as part of the content as well. But truthfully, I mean, most people don't know this, but going into last year, like at the beginning of the year, as part of my resolutions for the whole year, one of my strategies was to broaden the way that I communicate, broaden the conversations that I was willing to have on this channel. And so at different points in time, it's still part of me trying to find that balance. You know, got to grow gradually in what it is. And I'm probably overextended on one side more than the other. But at the same time, through this process, that's where things like Culture United come from. You know, that's where me being faster or more connected with the daily news cycle comes from, which truthfully is what leads up to the best breakdowns. I think last year, overall, even though I dropped fewer breakdowns than normally, for example, I honestly think that's probably my best run of breakdowns ever. So there's 6 of them I think I did last year. And I personally feel like that's probably the strongest 6 I might have ever done, right? Between the game going out sad part 2, between Drake Deserves a Smoke, between Lupe Samurai talking about chill, between Shakespeare and Shakedown, and the other 2 that I did in there. I think those are probably 6 of the strongest I might have ever done. But they all came from being a product of the news cycle. And so I am definitely focused on making sure that I continue to do the things I'm most known for, because that's the reason why most of my audience ever cared about me in the first place. And neglecting them is not something that comes easy to me by any means. You know, I'm most appreciative for people who rock with me the longest and are still here, because a lot of people just come in and out. But I'm also really blessed and thankful for the new audience that I've gained over the past year. And what Punch said there really hit me, because it is a reminder that, you know, you've got to be able to grow gradually. You've got to be able to make sure that you don't leave certain communities behind. Everything can't be a light switch. And sometimes I think it's a good point for all of us to remember. So 1 second applause to Punch for that one. What else is in there? There's so many jewels in here. Now, I really love this next one. This next one I love because it really gives you a taste. It really gives you an insight on how independent, how DIY, how straight on the ground that TDE was from the beginning, and how everyone played a role in the success of this generational legendary imprint.
I worked at Quiznos in Carson. You know what the first day I had, you know what the owner did? He tapped me on the shoulder and he said, hey, picked up a piece of trash and put it into the trash can. And he said, if I do that, what do you think I expect of you? Mm-hmm. And walked out. And I said, that's a valuable lesson.
I mean, for people who don't know, Curtis and Daylight worked at the same Quiznos. That's a talented ass Quiznos. 1 second applause.
Absolutely.
In terms of
I'll go even further. We had a show one day. It was a J-Rock show. Mm-hmm. So Dave was DJing.
You're right.
In between transitions, he would leave the DJ booth with posters and go hand them out in the crowd.
Stop.
I was at the merch booth.
Yeah.
Selling T-shirts.
Dave is DJing, handing out posters. Punch is at the merch booth selling T-shirts. J-Rock's on stage. Listen to this.
Top was upstairs recording the show.
Top's upstairs recording the show. Top Dog is upstairs recording the show. That's dedication. That is crafting something with no resources. That is another representation of how far this organization has truly traveled in the past 20 years.
No, hey, no, push the button, please, sir.
Right.
Push the button, please, sir. These are the moments we got to make sure that we timestamp. No round of applause. Just the button, you good. But yeah, oh my goodness. So wait a minute. Okay, so this is an operation where everybody is all hands on.
Yeah,
You said top is recording at the top of the building.
absolutely.
Crazy.
He had the video camera out, getting the footage.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like everybody was working. Like we didn't even have titles when we first started.
Mm-hmm.
Our title was "Get It Done."
Get it done. Get it done. What's interesting about that,
Our title was Get It Done. Get It Done. 1 second applause. It really is an inspirational story. It's an amazing case study. Amazing case study. Those of us who went to business school or who studied finance or who are in business economics or whatever it is. One of the things that I'm always really fascinated by are stories within the music industry particularly that are just amazing case studies. Like the Little Xan case study is amazing to me, right? Here's Stat Quo. He invested in this kid because he had tattoos on his face and he sounded interesting. Got him a deal, and Lil Xan blows up. But the deal that he gets is a $3 million deal, and he gives Lil Xan one. Now, whatever happened between Lil Xan and Stat Quo happened after this initial very independent-minded music industry veteran, who's now one of the most official executives in the space, period, took a chance, invested intentionally, and actually made it happen, right? I love case studies like that. Fascinating stuff. And the TDE case study is incredible. Incredible. I mean, even them going on tour with Strange Music. You know, at one point in time, Tech Nine was always in the Forbes Cash Kings list. And he's the only one that never passed the grandma test, right? He's up there with Nicki Minaj and J. Cole and Jay-Z and whoever. And then somewhere around 15, 17, 19, whatever, is Tech Nine. Tech Nine doesn't get, broadly speaking, hip-hop radio spins like that. Broadly speaking, they created their own ecosystem, I would say inspired by the Juggalo model. They're touring hundreds of shows a year all over the country, meeting their fans directly, taking that money to build their own empire in Kansas City, and found another way to become, at those point in times, those years, one of the most successful acts in hip-hop without passing the grandma test. My grandma didn't know Tech Nine. 1 second applause to my grandma. 1 second applause to Tech Nine. But that model, the traveling the country, going to all these different places, performing at all these shows, a lot of times they're in nowhere, Idaho, somewhere, Wyoming, wherever they are, doing all these shows. They were trendsetters. They were pioneers for that model in hip hop, the way that they were doing it. Now everybody's Tech Nine. In the years since, a number of different independent labels started following a similar model. Funk Volume at one point in time was heavily inspired by the Tech Nine or the Tech Nine Strange Music model. And J-Rock, they were on tour with them. They were actually on tour with them. It's one of the strongest ways to actually create a massive audience. We go outside and touch people. Go to where they are and put on a show. And so that's part of the TDE case study and the success that they've built over the course of these years. You know, they've gone from an organization where their job title was Get It Done. They didn't even have titles. Top's up there recording the show, Punch is up there selling merch, Dave is DJing and going down and giving out posters while J-Rock is performing. And then they're able to extrapolate upon that on different shows, working with other organizations of all types, going on the road and touching people. It makes sense that they have always seem to have a grasp on what the culture's feeling. Shout out to FD Signifier. But also that their audiences have transcended to the places they have. They went on the road and actually touched people. You know, so it's just another reminder that nobody should be too big to play whatever role they need to be playing in order on the road to crafting their dreams. 1 second applause. All right. This next part right here I thought was really dope too. Now, I've always been very curious about Punch as a MC, as a lyricist, but also very curious about where his ear and his feel for music comes from, right? I mean, everyone heard the Hard Part 6, right? Kendrick describes him as Phil Jackson, played Phil Jackson in those early practices, strategies on how to be great amongst the averages, right? I picked his brain on what was ordained, highly collaborative, right? We've heard people, SZA talk about Punch that way. I've heard Daylight talk about Punch that way. Everyone in a room full of mirrors, for example. People across the music industry from, just different relationships that we both share for people who do different things. Always talk about how Punch has this innate ear, this innate feel. If you listen to the advice that he was giving Daylight earlier in this clip, one previous clip that we showed, where he's talking about how work on your mid-range. It's underrated and nobody can guard it. I always wondered where that came from. I mean, Punch is a tremendous MC lyricist on his own. But but is that a trained thing? Is that a research thing? And I found, for me personally, this is something I was always curious about. I never asked him before. But I finally got my answer, and I was happy about it. Listen to what Punch says.
So I go back to my pops was a mixtape DJ in the projects. So he would always.
His pops was a mixtape DJ in the projects. Mixtape DJ in the projects. Now, what year is that? The 80s? The early 90s? Earlier than that? But listen to how he describes this.
Always make tapes for people. This is R&B and early hip hop.
Right.
So he used to constantly play The Show by Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick.
Nice.
Like
Legendary. 1 second applause.
we could pick my mama up from work. He just run it on replay.
Yeah.
Push rewind and go back to it. You know what I'm saying? So that was my earliest influence to where I'm like, yo, it's kind of cool. I learned all the lyrics. We rap it back and forth to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was some of my earliest stuff that stuck out to me.
See, I'm getting it.
Yeah, see, I mean, 1 second applause to that story. I love stories like that. I think we're all influenced by our older parents, cousins, uncles, brothers, sisters, whoever, right? And, I always talk about my Jedi Master, my cousin Shah, my older cousin Shah. 1 second applause to cousin Shah. He played such an influence in my life. But my mom and my dad, both of my parents were super into music. There's a video on this channel that's dedicated to my mom. And thank you to everyone who's actually seen that. That's my favorite thing I've ever done, ever. At least that's the one that's most meaningful to me for obvious reasons. But she was all up in music. So was my dad too. But my mom was always really progressive with music. And she would always feed me tapes and records before I even knew what was going on. And we had similar moments like that. And so that's one of the reasons why there's always a picture of my mom in the background of anything that I'm recording. Anytime I'm at, my whatever home base I'm at, my mom's always right behind me, right? She's right there to the right, the bottom left, or I guess how does it look on the screen? I guess it's the bottom right on the screen. Maybe it's the bottom left on the screen. She's over my right shoulder, and it's a reminder to me, she really is my spirit animal in that way. But she had an immense influence on how I feel music, not necessarily what I look for in music, but how I feel music. My mom was always like, "Ooh, Justin, that don't feel good." Right? But then she would take the opposite approach, even if she didn't even understand it. Right? Like she would, my mom loved my Bone Thugs and Harmony phase, even though she had no idea what they were talking about at all. Right? And so I say all that to say that DNA is so ingrained in me. And it's interesting to hear Punch say that his dad was a mixtape DJ in the projects in the early 80s and early 90s. So he's just been around it. He's just been feeling it. He had his father out there rapping the show with him while they go pick his mom up. And those little experiences or that daily environment being in has been so crucial to everything that he's crafted in his career, but all the influence that he's been able to put in other people that he's worked with and become their Phil Jackson. So I thought that was a dope anecdote too. 1 second applause. So, of course, they talked about the battle. Now, going into this conversation in my mind, I was like, Punch must be okay to talk about this stuff. Generally speaking, TDE is pretty closed lip. They're very particular about who they talk to and what they talk about and when they do talk about stuff. And so when I saw that Curtis announced that this was happening, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting because we're in the 1 year anniversary. The 1 year anniversary of this battle. And they spent a significant time on it. A significant time on this battle. I'm not going to go through all the clips. I really think you guys should go over and watch this conversation on your own. I'm sure Curtis is going to drop clips. There's a number of clips on social media already. But one of my favorites was that Curtis asked Punch what the real origin of the beef between Kendrick and Drake was. I think most of us looked at it as Control was where this all started. And there's other people who have different theories or whatever. And, these guys have known each other long enough that who knows, it might be something more personal behind it or something else or some other little slight. But Curtis asked Punch this question, and this is how it goes.
Situation. Do you know where that starts, or can you even speak on where that may start?
I can give you my perspective.
Okay.
And yeah, to my perspective, that's where it started.
Yeah.
So he confirmed that from his perspective, it all started with the Control verse.
Dot did the whole thing, and it's a competition thing.
Right.
Not a I hate you thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? We rapping. I'm trying to be better than everybody. You should.
It's a competition thing, not an I hate you thing. Look, it started off as a competition thing, and then I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. Surprised you wanted that feature request. We got some. 1 second applause. Great song.
Me too.
Right.
So a lot of people took it personal.
Why do you think that was missed, especially when we know this is a highly competitive environment?
It was all.
This is hilarious right here. I'm going to run it back once 5. This is hilarious. Listen to Punch's answer.
Why do you think that was missed, especially when we know this is a highly competitive environment?
It was all the light-skinned niggas.
It's all the light skin. Look at Curtis's face right here. 1 second applause.
That's why I want to be traded from this team. I told y'all, trade me. My mama named me D''WAN.
Bro, no, I'm joking, but I'm kind of serious at the same time.
No, you're not. You're not joking. I'm with you. I agree.
Pusha T was mentioned, right?
Right.
Pusha T tweeted Dot and said, "I hear you loud and clear, Kendrick Lamar."
What's the confusion?
Meek Mill seen Dot in the club.
Yeah.
Walked up and shook his hand. Said, "I got to get you back." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When my guy Cole seen Dot, they ended up escalating to the fight with him and Puff.
Oh, no.
1 second applause. Cole had a problem too. Cole had a problem. Cole spent a lot of time throwing rocks and hiding hands. I liked where he is now. He seems like he has come to grips with who he is and who he's comfortable being within himself, but that does not change. What's this? What year are we talking about with this? What, 2013 is Control, I guess, maybe 14? It doesn't change a 10-year run. It doesn't change a 10-year run. I'm glad they've got past it, but what happened still happened. 1 second applause. Cole had a problem.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Then with Drake, he doing interviews like he really upset about it.
He was very upset. That Elliot Wilson was telling.
Right. And that kind of threw everybody for a loop. It's like, huh? What we doing?
Especially when once again I keep pointing back to the roots of things, and that you were in a room. Like even Ali talked about it. He's like, he knows how much of a blessing it was to be in an environment where it was highly competitive with not just 4 artists.
Yeah.
Anybody who could at any given point in time could be somebody's main artist.
Yep.
And it's going to be competitive, especially when you got that going.
Thing though, what we didn't take into consideration is everybody didn't come up that way. So it was second.
And that is a really great point. Everybody didn't come up that way. I mean, we've been at the point where rap music is bigger than hip hop for a long time. A long time. There are a number of people who like rap music, who deliver rap music, who specialize in rap music, who are very disconnected from hip-hop culture, ethos, and history, or even other elements of hip-hop. You can be a rapper, do rap music, do hip-hop style rap music, and never really interact with the culture outside of your garage band and whoever you're talking to online, whatever digital communities that you're a part of. And so, and from that nature, people aren't training and practicing and developing the same reps and skills and perspective as they used to be, or used to be more common when the culture was a lot smaller. You can make arguments. There's always been a rap song that might be bigger than what people understand hip hop to be. But the elements of hip hop, the nature of hip hop, the competitive drive, the community, the emphasis on knowledge, education, all those things, that also permeated what was happening in the music. You don't hear that in the same way. Just like you don't hear a lot of third-person stories the same way. Showing skills, how dope you rap isn't the same as it used to be. A lot of it now is more based off of how many streams or how many followers or how many subscribers or whatever. And so you have a lot of people who take offense to things that are very basic hip hop kind of things. Like, yo, I'm trying to be better than such and such, right? That is that everyone doesn't have that same ethos. A lot of times, especially now when you have a digital culture, digital conversation, internet conversation, social media ethos that's permeating where all these conversations are happening. People take offense a lot easier. A lot easier. I mean, even on that Control verse, Dot was like, I got love for you all. That's how he set it up. I got love for you all. You know what I'm saying? He didn't just jump out and say, I'm trying to murder you. I got no love. I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder, right? That's competitive energy. And a lot of people really understood where he was coming from. And then two people didn't. And it felt odd to me at that point in time when I saw some people take offense to what he's saying. I understand why other people who maybe weren't called out in that took offense to certain things, particularly when he took the corrupt line, which is King of Boast Coastline. I understand people coming from New York that might have taken offense to that. You know what I mean? I understand that type of thing, right? Generally speaking, most people understood where that was coming from. Mac Miller had my favorite response. He said, man, I can't do noun or verbs, but I'm going to have to just kill him with adjective raps. You know what I mean? Rest in peace, Mac Miller. 1 second applause. But we are now at a point where rap is way bigger than hip-hop, and the internet is bigger than everything. And a lot of people are engaging with this culture or products of this culture without necessarily having a direct connection to the tenets, the ethos, the culture, the covenants of the culture itself. And you put an internet environment on top of pretty normal competitive things in hip hop, and tension can rise. Now, don't get me wrong. It could happen. It happened before back in the day. This isn't something that's completely unique. You know, Cannabis sweared up and down that he was trying to give LL Cool J props when he talked about the mic on his arm, and that turned into a battle, right? So a lot of times people just don't take things the same way. That's always going to be the case. But in this situation, it seemed like everyone kind of understood what this is because we'd been in a place where competitive hip hop had not been at the forefront. And that, like he said on To Pimp a Butterfly, that whole verse effed up the game. 1 second applause.
Nature for us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But everybody didn't have that same thing.
So this next part of the conversation I really love too. This is where he talks about his reaction to Euphoria. Curtis and Punch talk about every track on here, or every track that happened within this beef. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. But this moment was actually pretty interesting to me too. Check out where Punch was and how he heard Euphoria and what he has to say about it.
What's crazy is, like I said, I had to go on tour.
Oh, you had to go on tour. That's right. Okay.
So I'm in Australia when it kick off.
Wait a minute. Slow it down. You're in Australia.
Yeah.
The irony. Continue.
That's hilarious. So we out
1 second applause.
there, SZA doing her shows, and I called Dot like, yo, I need to hear this record. Because we had been talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to fly home. So we had a gap of about, I think, 3 or 4 days between shows.
Right.
I took that flight from Australia all the way back home.
Oh, wow.
Went to the studio. He pulled up on, it was a Room Full of Mirrors session.
Yeah.
He pulled up. I played the whole Room Full of Mirrors album first.
Yeah.
Then I made everybody leave.
You made it.
Yeah.
So he's in the studio with Dot and A Room Full of Mirrors, the entire collective. He played them that album. And then after they're done playing it, Punch made everybody leave, right? Because he wanted to hear what Kendrick would turn out to be Euphoria. He wanted to hear the track. This is what happens next.
No pushback. I know folks had to put their ear to the door or
It
something.
was funny. Everybody left, right? Went in the booth.
Yeah.
Huge booth. And he played me the joint. It was playing through the earphones in the booth.
Oh, so they could. Oh,
So everybody
wow.
heard it anyway.
So they had to act like they didn't hear nothing.
They went into the booth and heard it anyway because it was playing through the earphones in the booth. 1 second applause. So that's how the idea, the notion that Euphoria was initially longer got out into the ethos in the first place. Here's Punch again.
And like,
Yeah.
whoa, wish I could hear that record.
Bruh.
There was rumors that there was an 18-minute version of that. Had you ever heard anything about that?
I don't know the length, but it was definitely longer.
There was a
Yeah, it was definitely longer than the version that the world got.
yeah.
So it was a lot of stuff that that didn't make it on there.
What perspective can you give us about? Look at he over here tripping out. what
We all tripping out. 1 second applause.
perspective can you share with us about the version we never heard?
It was just some things in there that I didn't think would have been beneficial in the long run to put in there. So I gave him my input on that or whatever. So he took some of those things out.
Now, Kendrick infamously said, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5
Yeah.
in stock. I know I'm moving out, but I want to ask this specific question because I still want to walk down the timeline. Have you had a chance to hear the Mother 5 in stock?
Nah.
He says he had it here. I'm going to take him at his word. 1 second applause. But you see, Curtis is covering a lot of ground. In this conversation, right? I mean, even just these clips that I pointed out, we get Punch's influences, we get TDE early environment that they're cultivating as an independent DIY company, burgeoning imprint that's going to tackle the world. We've got the origins of the beef. He goes through the entire timeline of things. He says one thing that I think is really interesting with Family Matters, particularly, right? Now, to Punch's credit, Punch remains extremely complimentary of Drake throughout this conversation. This isn't a hate fest by any means. You know, he talks about how fantastic of a songwriter Drake is, all these things, right? So there's no shade coming from Punch. I don't take shade coming from Punch when he's talking about a lot of these things. But he did point out 2 things. Now, everybody knows Taylor Made Freestyle's my favorite track that Drake put out in that battle because I don't get Drake talking in third person a whole lot, so I really appreciated that. He talked about how that song is the song that unified everybody. So anybody on the West Coast who had any differences in agreement with everybody, once Taylor Made came out, it came across as mocking, and that's when everybody was solidified. That's when this became something much bigger. So that's that is Punch's perspective on that song. And then he talks about Family Matters as well. And here's what he says about Family Matters. Here's the criticism he has.
I had the same excuse me, I had the same thought with Family Matters that I did with push-ups. And it was that it's not enough.
It's not enough. What makes it not enough in your eyes?
I think another mistake that they made was giving the idea that they was finna push this red button.
The red button was a mistake. Listen to this breakdown.
So I think when you did that, you built the anticipation a bit too high.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now people have expectation.
Right.
Like, I'm finna hear some stuff now. He finna push the red button.
Mm-hmm.
It's over now.
Right.
And when that happened, then what you call it drop right after.
Well, okay, to that point of the red button,
Yeah.
y'all stay pretty even keel no matter what's going on. y'all don't let the elements around you change what your strategy is. In that situation, when you hear that, do you think there's a part in Dot that says, all right, it's time to lock in? Or is there like we're doing this, let me over prepare for what that may be? Or is it just, I already know what I am and I'm confident what's about to happen?
The latter part, you already know what it is.
Yeah.
Like people were saying that wasn't battle tested.
Where did that narrative even, and it came from people who don't battle rap.
They just didn't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And speaking on things that they didn't know about.
Right.
When I saying that, I'm listening like, hey, all right. I hear you. But it's like Dot was fully prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? With no songs written, he was fully prepared.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, no, man. But it's like you got the anticipation that his red button, that thing drop.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay. Oh, you got dirty.
Mm.
You went far. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go further.
You got dirty. You went far. Let's go further. That's what happens. 1 second applause. Now we're in court. This is really a fantastic conversation. You know, there's a part here that's really brief, and there's another part that's really brief I think are worth highlighting. And one of them is about hip-hop media. And I'm in hip-hop media. You guys seem to enjoy hip-hop media. And I've recently been doing more pieces that include analysis on what's happening in hip-hop media. It'll be the topic on Culture United this Monday. It's going to be one of the topics that we talk about. And Punch is obviously incredibly insightful, obviously incredibly tapped in. And I love the way that he talks about this. So I'm going to give this a quick run so you can hear Curtis ask him about his takes on hip-hop media and what he and his point of view on all this.
There's been a lot of talk about these outlets chasing gossip instead of artistry.
Yeah.
Is that a failure of media or of audience demand?
It's a failure of society.
Damn.
You know what I'm saying? Because we attracted to violence, sex, drugs, money.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are our things. So if it's not about that, it's taking a back seat.
Right.
That's just human nature.
Yeah.
But I want to bring light to those other things because there's so much more to it than just those same sensational things.
Mm-hmm.
1 second applause. I think that's a sense of a broader energy. And when I say a broader energy, right, because we talk about a shift that's happening all year. Part of this whole year's conversation has been like, oh, this shift is happening. And what I personally, when I mention things like that, I'm really talking about how other concepts are becoming cool, okay, popular to talk about again. It's okay to lean into other aspects of life and society. Oh, you can be successful while also not spending all of your time on those 3 topics that are problematic from a macro level. At least in American society, I'd argue macro perspective in any capitalistic society. And I think TDE overall has done a great job across their roster of infusing other conversations in through their music and to their audiences. All the artists have done a great job of doing that in one way or the other. And so the shift I think about is like, okay, well, this is what happens when the people on top are people who do that reflexively and with intention. And it is exciting to see people being able to find success, whether that's creators, whether that's YouTubers, whether that's artists, whether that's producers, whoever, in a range of different ways, not locked into the same energies of the last age. So I was really happy to hear him say that he's trying to bring light to other things too. 1 second applause. And this last part right here is really quick too. And this is just really, really something I'm glad Punch had a chance to say and communicate here. You know, I've been watching Curtis on YouTube for 10 years, I guess. I've known Curtis in person and real life outside for 15 years. I've been listening to his music. And Curtis has spent a lot of time weighing different criticisms from different communities. Artists community, at one point in time, when people started moving into the media space who were formerly artists, they would receive a lot of criticism, and people would tell them that their music career didn't work out. That's why you're doing this thing. You know, when you are someone who's an artist and you come into a journalistic environment or a YouTube environment, you can get a lot of hate from other journalists. I mean, I came up in the 2000s, early teens, New York Cool Table era, and none of those dudes had any of those publications. None of them wanted to talk to me. Like any of the legendary legacy publications, anybody who wrote for them, they didn't want to talk to me. I would pitch stuff. They would never hit me back at all. It was a very much a cool table worth of conversation. This is one of the reasons why I'm so open with other creators all the time. That's why I'm generally such an open book when it comes to if people are asking for help or my perspective on things. That's why I shout out different creators all the time. I know what it's like to be sitting on the outside, you know what I mean? But you also, so the journalism, the media industry can be very critical, very closed door to people on the independent space. I mean, Curtis has been doing this for years. You know, he's been doing this prior to all the consolidation that happened during COVID. You know, he's been doing this when the algorithm was firmly not on his side. He did producer content over there as well. You know, Curtis and I talk all the time, and it's really refreshing for me to see him step into his comfort zone, or for me to see him become more comfortable with being someone who has a very structurally incredible YouTube channel, who is able to offer things for a DIYer perspective, offer things musically, still be an artist, while still shouting out other artists, who can take the practitioner point of view and turn that into engaging dynamic content and still be respected for in a field that he, I think, is still now getting comfortable with being a part of and being, in my opinion, at the forefront of, right? And so this is one of my favorite parts of this conversation right here. And this is for anybody who has a lot of criticisms, for people who maybe were good at one thing and they try to do something else. It's a great something for all of us to pull from when we have a bunch of dream killers in our life telling us to stay in our lane. And this is something that's great that Punch has to say.
So much. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Anything you want to say last before we get up out of here?
Man, again, appreciate the opportunity. And with you personally, don't stop doing anything you're doing. Mm-hmm. Producing, your raps, this whole thing, like do all of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Don't limit yourself.
Why do you emphasize that?
Because we'll get caught up in a mind frame of maybe I shouldn't be doing this now.
Yeah.
And it's just not true.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was listening to LL. He had got an award at some event I was at. Mm-hmm. And he was saying it's not man, I'm gonna mess his quote up, but it was about, it's not about old and young. Mm-hmm. It's about old and new.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, young is an age thing. Mm-hmm. New is ideas thing.
There's a mentality attached to that.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it's not about what era you from, how old you are. It's about fresh ideas.
Right.
And we got to keep that, because in hip-hop, they always say it's a young man's game.
Never like that.
Nah, because it put a cap on us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't hear that in other genres.
Not at all. As they sell out stadiums. Yeah.
Metallica can go on tour right now.
Right now.
You know what I'm saying? The Rolling Stones can go on tour.
If they say something about a band coming up and the people agree,
yeah,
pretty much pack it up.
Yeah.
They still have influence. It's not looked at as, oh, they ain't doing nothing because da-da-da-da, regardless of what their record sales are.
So my whole point for you, for everybody listening, don't limit ourselves.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Let's do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't limit ourselves. Let's do everything. It's a really insightful conversation. This is a great get for Curtis. For anyone who's tapped into this conversation, it's uplifting and enlightening in a number of ways, whether it's specifics about some of the biggest artists on the planet, or whether it's business ideas or tips, or whether it's just sometimes that spiritual, universal reminder that we're on the right track. This conversation got it all. I'll put a link in the description. Make sure everyone checks it out. There's a ton more in here. I'm looking at this now. I'm like, dang, I've been talking for almost an hour. I think that's mostly me talking. Because I look at these clips, I probably used like 12-minute worth of clips. This is a 3-hour conversation. Definitely give it a watch. Let me know what you think about all of this. If you've seen it, let me know what stands out to you. If you've heard anything in this conversation that resonates with you, let's go ahead and share that too. This is a great DIYer conversation for all of us artists that are out there. My name is Justin Hunt. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow @The Company Man on everything. Follow the Justin Hunt Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping in. Systematical culture views, it's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping it. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, dog. You don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.